Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Greybeards of Beastwerx podcast, where we look at national security issues facing the United States and specifically the war in the Persian Gulf as it continues to carry on. And this past weekend was not a good weekend. With me to discuss all of this, again, Ken Campbell, former Navy Special Operations and Military Intelligence and highly decorated, and as well Bob Sands, Hall of Fame investigative journalist. I'm Mike Betcher, former Network Foreign correspondent. And
Also a
again,
member of the Hall of
welcome.
Fame.
Huh?
Also a member of the Hall of Fame.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
thank you for pointing that out. But, I didn't want to, just
There you go.
want to get through my stuff and give everyone else their due here. Tough weekend.
Oof.
We lost 3 troops in Jordan.
And maybe 4. Yeah.
Well, no,
Maybe
3 in
4.
Jordan, yeah, 1 in, right, I'm
and
sorry.
1 in Iraq.
Yeah.
The one in Iraq, there was, and something you know a lot about, Ken, explosive ordnance disposal teams were trying to get rid of an unexploded drone warhead, and something happened. It blew, and 1 soldier was killed, and a couple of others were wounded. In Jordan, a different scenario. These were incoming missiles, and there are reports coming out of Iran, and I don't think these are confirmed yet, but there's a lot of chatter out there that these were steerable hypersonic missiles that attacked um, a U.S. base, secret U.S. base not so secret anymore, but in eastern Jordan. And there are multiple smaller bases in that eastern part of Jordan that heads towards Iraq. Ken, what is your assessment of that specific attack and what Iran was doing in that base, trying to hit that base in Jordan?
Well, I think their strategy at this point is to continue selective strikes and to be able to demonstrate how they can reach out and touch even all the way to Jordan. For the main over the weekend, the targets were Kuwait and Bahrain. In fact, I just got an update report, a strike monitor report that I have set up to provide an automatic feed. But Kuwait is just now reporting another incoming Iranian barrage, and Bahrain is formally condemning Iranian drone attacks directed against, their systems supporting civilian air traffic. So whatever's gone on, Iran is now going after, for example, Bahrain civil aviation infrastructure. Now, neither Bahrain, Kuwait, or CENTCOM has announced any new casualties beyond those that have, you mentioned. One thing I do need to say, I've been monitoring the explosive ordnance disposal community social media to try and get some insight into what happened in northern Iraq. It doesn't appear at this time that EOD or explosive ordnance disposal personnel were on the scene with that drone.
Oh, really? Okay.
Not sure who at this point. The fog of war, right? It remains to be seen, but I think it's it's tragic that something like that occurred. And to be honest, if you're not well versed in EOD tradecraft, or at least given the training regarding what to do and what not to do when you have a suspect dud fire, you're gonna have problems like what we've just seen in this incident. Problems. You're gonna have casualties. Is what you're gonna have. But getting back to your question, yeah, I think Iran is going to be keeping up a steady stream of attacks, being judicious with its inventory. Mike, I didn't have time to check out the information that is circulating regarding hypersonic steerable missiles that Iran might have. We do know that they have spent a lot of time research and development for some very interesting missile capabilities, to include one variant that is able to drop right before impact a number of warheads, which then completely throw off the anti-missile defense systems. But we'll have to get back and revisit that question about steerable hypersonic weapons. But I wouldn't discount it.
Well,
Yeah, because if you look at the way our anti-missile defense systems work, like Patriots, they aim for an intersection point in space, but if you have a steerable missile, it can determine that intersection point and evade. And then if you have multiple warheads, that sort of missile system, then again, there are multiple points in space and you got one Patriot missile. So it makes it very, very difficult to defend against. The world is getting a crash course in anti-missile defense. Certainly, Ukraine has been going through that for years right now, and now we are experiencing that. So,
well, one of the things that strikes me right off the bat, if that was the missile, if that's the kind of missiles they've got, does Iran have that technology? Do they have that technical ability to build steerable missiles that are hypersonic?
I wondered that, Bobby.
Maybe.
Let's ask.
Yeah.
And make a query. Stand by.
Okay.
You guys continue.
Do. Okay.
Query. So, Bobby, you were looking at oil prices, Iran economy, all sorts of various issues. Where do you want to start?
Well, let's go to the oil situation first. Right now, the crude Brent went all the way up to $91 a barrel early today. $91 a barrel. As soon as trading started, it skyrocketed. Now it's fallen back to 88 and change. WTI is at about 84. So I mean, they're stabilizing right now, basically because supposedly people want to talk. There are the reports that right now mediators are the folks in Pakistan are sending information to Iran and to us, what people are saying and various proposals. So that talk was enough to stabilize crude oil. But just as an example, in my neighborhood, there's a convenience store that usually has the cheapest gas. It was $3.09 a gallon last week. Yesterday morning when I went past, it was at $3.44, and that's for 10% ethanol. The actual regular gasoline is now $4 a gallon in Oklahoma, right at it. So prices at the pump have skyrocketed dramatically in a matter of a week. As far as Iran's economy is concerned, it's in shambles. And there's several graphs here that I've got I can show you to kind of back that up. Let me get these babies pulled up real quick. This first one is their inflation rate, and it's just through the roof. And there she is right there. And this is from April, and you can see where that inflation rate is. And since then, it's now increased over 100% year over year. The real is now worth, it takes 1.3 million reals for $1 bill. So their money has become basically worthless. And the other part of this is their economic status. Well, this top graph right here indicates their inflation rate. The bottom is their GDP growth. GDP is plummeting and inflation is skyrocketing. Again, these are from April. So I don't know, frankly, how you could continue to run a country that's got an economy that's in virtual total collapse. But as you've pointed out, Mike, these folks I guess, are used to it.
Well, everyone, we were talking before we came on, the three of us were about, does Iran want this war to be over soon, or do they want to stretch this out, despite the economic pain they're feeling? And why, when they had an MOU that was going to make them hundreds of billions of dollars, and did,
Yeah, immediately.
and they took a strategy. Some of it was their response to what the United States side was doing on this, but it focused on the Straits of Hormuz, that we're going to continue to cause problems there, which then escalated the war through the ceasefire. Ceasefire ends. Memorandum of Understanding basically is ended. And they continue to strike at an increased level across the Middle East region and in the Persian Gulf, knowing that this turns off that money spigot, most of it. And why are they doing that? And I was listening to a commentator and podcaster that I respect, Mr. Global, Matt Randolph, who's also here in Oklahoma. And he was pondering the fact, does Iran really want to end this war, or are they continuing? Do they want to keep this war going at a low boil, specifically to influence American elections, and specifically for revenge against Donald Trump?
And that's not new for them, is it?
No, it's not. I mean, if you go back to the Iranian hostage crisis in 1979 and 1980, they kept that going throughout the latter stages of the Jimmy Carter administration, until the morning that President Ronald Reagan was inaugurated and those hostages were released. Now, they continued holding those hostages, even though it meant economic suicide, not just for that short period of time, but for decades to come, because sanctions, global sanctions, were imposed against Iran, and that influences Iranian economy to this day. They also were very good at prolonging the war against the insurgency in Iraq after the 2003 invasion. I think they were key in supplying the weapons and EFPs and IEDs and other armament that were used by the Iraqi insurgency against U.S. forces. They're masters at prolonging conflict. Sometimes it's puzzling what they hope to gain, and certainly what they're not gaining is something good economically for their people at home. And that's what you just pointed out, Bobby.
Yeah. Ken, anything yet on that inquiry you made?
Yeah, quite a bit. And again, going back into my own knowledge management files, first and foremost, the ballistic missiles that they're fielding now, first of all, they exceed Mach 5, certainly on reentry, and some of them do have a degree of terminal steering or thrust vector maneuverability. For example, they field a system called the Fatah-1, which is not equivalent to an advanced long-gliding Chinese or Russian hyperglide vehicle or hypersonic missile. However, at reentry, these things are moving quite fast, and they have some steerable capability. That said, the bottom line assessment is that, yes, Iran is absolutely trying to move in that direction. And who's helping them? Well, we know for a fact that North Korea has been the source of a lot of the ballistic missile technology. But I don't have anything in open source to talk to the specter of the potential of either China or Russia providing any additional technologies along those lines. Iran has approached China for some technical assistance and understanding in the development of hypersonics. But
Wow.
that's what the reporting says. My gut says that yes, Russia and China are probably providing some level of support to those programs.
And who is, I would assume, Russia, maybe China, giving them targeting support
Well,
from
there's
their
already open
satellites?
source information talking about that. Um, as I recall, Russia certainly. I'd have to go back and research China, but Iran also has some interesting technical collections, means, and methods. There's one report that came out recently that talked about Iran's ability to tap into a dated but still used um, um, for lack of better words, a telephone wire system that carries to some degree, cell phone communications, and then being able to take the metadata from those communications that include time and location and whatnot and use it to uh, target American soldiers or service people in the GCC countries.
Yeah, well, I just ran a quick search also, and pulls up China intelligence reports indicating Iran may be utilizing China's, I don't know if I'm pronouncing this right or not, Bidao satellite navigation system to guide its missiles and drones, providing supply chain. There's a supply chain and parts coming out of China. Air defense systems bolstered by China. Their capabilities by providing advanced surface-to-air missile batteries, such as the HQ-9B systems. So apparently, there's lots of evidence to indicate China's helping a bunch, and so is Russia. It says that Russia is reportedly providing Iran with sophisticated satellite imagery and real-time intelligence to pinpoint exact locations of U.S. and allied military assets. So there you go.
There you go. And, while you were talking, Bobby, I pulled up one article in my research archives that talked about Iran buying what we refer to as AbTech and AppTech, which is the metadata that is scraped or siphoned off of, all these sites that sell things, right? And then that information gets aggregated and third-party vendors buy that, and then its typical use in business is to aid in targeted advertising. But you can also use that because it's got geolocation metadata and whatnot to identify, pockets of cell phone activity, for example, or Internet of Things activity that can help resolve pattern of life related type understandings. I'll leave it to you guys to take that one to the next comment.
We'll have to look
Wow.
into that. So here we three graybeards at Beastwerx, and you ask, okay, what is Beastwerx? Well, Beastwerx is the creation of Ken Campbell. And explain what Beastwerx is, because I want to get into the report you put out today about running out of arrows. But let's, this podcast is not just three guys here flapping their lips. This podcast discusses the research we're doing and the reports that we're putting out based on open source intelligence that gives us a picture that if you're in the National Security Council, you might be getting. So Ken, explain about Beastwerx, would you please, and what you're doing?
Yeah, sure. So I started Beastwerx primarily as a way to better inform myself with regard to what was going on. You know, it started with the war. I had done some earlier things leveraging, you know, technologies that are out there to help with research today to get under the you know, the reason rationale for you know, things that were not related to the war, like Venezuela and whatnot. And it provided, you know, it was able to come up with a means and a methodology to actually answer the questions that I had. So from there, started to take on, you know, some of these more serious questions, you know, regarding the war. And, you know, what Beastworks is morphed into is a high quality, high caliber uh, news article publishing capability that is capable of addressing just about any topic, any subject, and to do it in a very authoritative, responsible nature. You know, everything that we do gets re-shotgunned. Every statement of fact, every assumption is identified to include identifying all the resources or sources of information that are used in our reports. And our mantra is, you know, we provide the detail and the context, and we tell the truth, and you take it from there. And so, with that in mind, started publishing information on the war, everything from situation reports that cover more or less single events to longer, more detailed reports that talk the geopolitical nature of, for example, the ongoing discussions in Parlay with Iran, and uh, you know, started to build up a distribution network, and then became evident that this could very well become a business, and it did. And we're already generating revenue, and we've got some very interesting opportunities sitting in front of us. And of course, you know, the podcast is part of our outreach arm. You know, one of the things I informed an entity that I had an opportunity to talk to on Friday, as part of a business proposition. You know, I was asked, you know, well, why did you do this? And I said, I'm going to use a phrase that doesn't have a lot of, you know, it's not very popular these days. I said, because I felt a social responsibility to do it. I didn't feel like the news media, social media were getting the stories down or even getting them close to right. And, you know, not to malign those that are out there, you know, busting their ass, CNN and NBC and, you know, those news organizations that put people out on the gun line, like yourself and Bobby have been, you know, but you get the information in these, you know, 1 minute sound bites, and you're like, okay, what does that mean? So, you know, Beastworks, among other things, is filling in those detailed gaps. And we don't
And
charge. We don't
and where the
charge.
yeah, and where the Greybeards come in, between the three of us, we've seen most everything. And what that experience does is it doesn't give you answers. It gives you the the questions to ask in pursuit of those answers. And so to give our audience an example of how we develop these reports for Beastworks, we had a discussion over the past few days uh, about over the course of the last quarter century, we've been focused, the United States and the West, on an asymmetrical battle against terrorists. whether it's ISIS or Al Qaeda in Iraq or any number of other groups. And we got really, really good at that, really good. But this particular kind of war we're in now, I asked, are we prepared for that? Did we let, because there's been a lot of talk out there about our inventories of missiles, both for anti-missile defense and offensive attacks, ballistic missiles, that our supplies don't meet the demand, and the inventories are getting lower and lower. We did not expect to be in this kind of a particular conflict where really no boots on the ground, although there are a lot of boots all over the region. And again, over the past weekend, we saw 4 of our military personnel killed. But this is a drone / missile war that does not have a ground component underway, at least at the moment. And are we prepared to fight that? Were our inventories at a level to support this war for a long period of time? And so Ken put out today a report, and the title of, let me get it straight and remember it off the top of my head, are we running out of arrows? And I guess I would pose that, Ken, question to you. Are we running out of arrows?
Yeah, we're absolutely running out of arrows. So, my cold open, the one-liner on this is, America can win any 6-day missile war. The question is, where are we at day 90 or 140 plus, which I think we're now into? We already fired half of our THAAD magazine. That's a funny acronym that talks about sophisticated interceptors that include Patriots. And we're only able to regenerate a very small amount of those that are being equivalent. We're not able to produce a whole lot to get back, to the inventories that we need. And and the next question that gets posed from that is, well, are we built for a modern conventional war now? And I would say, yeah, on capability, but not on endurance. Mike, we were talking about that earlier. You want to chime in on that?
Yeah, I feel that we became, and as I mentioned earlier, we became so focused on asymmetrical war that and that's really a kind of war that's really based heavily on surveillance uh, and the capability to surveil globally, and to utilize special operations to go after those people you identify as possible threats, terrorists, insurgents, and we created a gigantic global capability to do that. But we have not fought a war similar to this, since 2003, but that had a ground component, more than a component, a lot of soldiers on the ground, and then we went into an asymmetrical phase. But and then that also goes back to 1991 and Desert Storm, and that was probably where this current state of war that we're in, that's where it was birthed. Was back then. We fired the early versions of the Patriot missiles at Saddam Hussein's incoming Scuds, and I don't think we hit many of those, but the systems got better and better and better, and it made it possible for war to be fought as it is now. Now, what's interesting about this is, um, you know, there seems to be no appetite whatsoever for there to be a ground component, which, uh, could bring about the end of a war. So we're stuck in this endless loop of missiles being fired back and forth, and economic targets, military targets, infrastructure targets being hit, and both sides bleeding each other, with no end in sight. And that is a war I don't think we were prepared to fight. I think the administration went into this war thinking it would be quick when they launched the strikes in February. We came off the success of Venezuela, uh, which was very, very short. And here, here we are. This war is still going on, and it's being felt by every human on Earth, because it's about oil, and that, in fact, it affects the global economy. So anyway, I get off my soapbox there, but I hope that's what you're referring to, the discussions that we were having. If not, tell me what I didn't say.
No, that's exactly right. While you were talking, I just went back and looked at one of the think tanks, CSIS, that had reported that, at least half the theater high altitude air defense interceptors are gone, nearly half the Patriots, and 30% of the Tomahawks. And for those, theater high altitude air defense deliveries, you're talking 3 years for rebuild time. Nothing is forecasted to be replaced in 2026. And so, what we have here, it's not a platform problem. We've got all the systems in the world to launch these things. In part, it's an industrial metabolism problem. In fact, the GAO has flagged missed interceptor delivery goals for years. And I guess the war just sent that invoice,
Yeah, well,
So-
if you go back in history, we faced the same thing at the beginning of World War II after the attack on Pearl Harbor. We had great industrial capacity, but it was not focused on military weapons production. But that turn was made very rapidly. The United States has the capability to make that turn, but it's a matter of the will of the nation and of the citizens of this nation to say, okay, political leadership, make that turn. We need to sharply increase our military capacity. But that's where, the Trump administration did it the quick and easy way, bypassing building a national consensus and national support for going to war. And now there is no support, very little support for that war. I think we just saw a figure that came from CNN, 29% approval
29,
now.
yeah.
Is that right, Bobby?
Yeah, 29%.
And so, there are moves, correct, Ken, to increase that amount of output, manufacturing output of missile systems, but to massively do that, my concern is this: is that we're focused on the Persian Gulf right now, but I think that China's Of course, China's really watching what's going on here. Taiwan, the issue of Taiwan remains an issue. They know, like the world knows, and we know for sure, that our stockpiles of these weapons are dwindling, and it again, as you pointed out, Ken, it's we're not at that capacity. It's not the launchers; it's the munitions that we have. Uh, yeah, we have the guns, but not the bullets, so to speak.
Yeah, the thing here is, Mike, is that, you know, our military industrial base is geared up, but there's a you know, a limit on what can be done in the near term. And in fact, one of the reports that I went through said it's, you know, for 2000, or excuse me, for a 600 a year delivery over the next several years to get the THAAD inventories back up to at least 2,000 or more. It's going to be 2030 before that happens. So we're talking 600 units can be produced per year, plus or minus, I guess, and contingent upon not burning up those stockpiles as they come off the assembly line. It'll be, you know, 2030 before those magazines are refilled.
Do you think that's why Trump announced last week, or was it the week before? It was during the NATO summit, and he told Zelensky that they would give them the license to manufacture Patriots there,
I think that's probably
because
part of it, but you know, by doing that, they also, we also start to be able to leverage Ukraine's industrial capacity. So one of the questions that brings to mind is, if we sell them an offset capability or a ability to, make that weapon indigenously, do we benefit from that beyond, the obvious, the money that's made? They build 3, we get 1, something like that. The other thing, though, that is happening is you have a number of, defense firms that are now motivated and certainly going to be resourced to produce cheaper yet as capable systems. But again, when will those be fielded? You have companies like, well, the obvious ones, you get Boeing and Lockheed and this sort of thing. But you have another company, it's called Anduril, which is very interesting, doing some really cool stuff. But then again, it's like, what's it going to take to get those inventories back up? Particularly as we, we keep looking towards China and the what ifs. What if that heats up? What are we going to do then?
And of course, all of this costs money. I mean, already the United States is 130%. Our debt is 130% above our gross domestic product. And actually, our debt has been above our gross domestic product since 2008, but it's been growing exponentially ever since. And it's taken off, well, frankly, since Trump took over second term. It's increased dramatically since then. And now we're looking at a $350 billion, another $350 billion on top of $1.5 trillion for the Pentagon to try to get everything paid for to recoup some of these, to rebuild some of these stockpiles. So, I mean, this is getting very expensive for the United States.
Well, I thought there was a grand money tree in Oklahoma and you just shake it,
Shake it real good. Yeah, well, I've been looking for that one. I haven't found it yet. But
we'll go down to Harold Ham here at Continental Resources, and Harold might have an extra billion lying around.
Yeah, the debt load right now in the United States equals $6 billion per every one of us. That's how much we owe. $6 billion. That's incredible. And going higher.
and most people can't buy a house.
Yeah, and there was a fascinating CNN report on that, Mike, that I read. A reporter spent weeks going across the country and did dozens of interviews to define the word affordability, and it really came through with this one Ohio woman who was paying $700 a month for rent. It's now that same apartment is $1,600 a month. She had to move in with her parents, with her kids. She's a single parent because she couldn't afford rent. And she added it up, and over the years she'd paid $250,000 in rent, but she can't buy a house. That's just stunning. In fact, I've got a graph here, if I can pull it up real quick, if I can find the darn thing. That really illustrates what happens if you own a house. And the point is, if you own a house, your net value immediately skyrockets. It's way up here. If you're a renter, it's way down here. Your net worth is virtually stagnant. And millions of Americans have to rent now because they can't afford to buy a house. That's affordability.
Yeah, it begs a question. Why hasn't some politician figured this out and put forward proposals for very low interest loans for a certain income level, and make, take those rent payments and turn them into, home ownership. I mean, there's the risk and the bad loans, and to some degree what I just described is what happened in 2007. But I don't think, with the housing mortgage lending and all the crap that went into that brought the economy screech into the floor in 2008, 9, etc. But it would seem to me that something could be done along those lines. You
Well,
have plenty of,
maybe it has with this new housing law that's gone into effect, this new housing bill. Here's that graph I was talking about. The net worth of homeowners has grown while renter wealth is flat. In 2022, the net worth of the average homeowner in America was $396.5 thousand. Look down here
for a homeowner.
For a homeowner. For
what
a renter,
about a non-homeowner?
$10,000. That's it. So, yeah, you own a home, you're a step ahead. So the three of us are a step ahead because I haven't rented in a very, very long time. I got lucky and managed to buy a house that nobody wanted, and I didn't have to put down a penny, and I walked into the bank and signed my name and had a house. And that was 34 years ago. You could do that then. You can't do that now. It's the only reason I got what I got.
Well, as long as we're on the subject of U.S. economy and politics, I want to bring that back to the war. What did you think of the dust-up between Marjorie Taylor Greene commenting about Secretary of Defense / War Hegseth's post about the sacrifice of the U.S. service members who were killed in Jordan and Iraq?
Well, I never really thought I'd ever say something like this, but I think Marjorie Taylor Greene hit it right on the head. I have to agree with her 100%. It was stunning.
Absolutely. I don't know how many times I've seen, the phrase in print media and whatnot that so-and-so leader, so-and-so politician, so-and-so whatever, sends prayers and condolences. And I just have to say that, having deployed into conflict zones multiple times and written what I call the death letter, that's the letter you leave for your family and whatnot.
Yeah. Oh,
that
no.
the last thing I ever really wanted them to have to do is to open that. And if they did, to know that my life was given to absolutely protect the national security. And I'm not so sure in this situation that we find ourselves, that's the case.
Well, here's what she had to say for anybody who didn't see it. Sacrifice what the, and you can fill in the blank there, are you talking about? What Hegseth said was, Godspeed, heroes, their sacrifice only stiffens our resolve. And she made the point they did not willingly sacrifice themselves. They were killed because of the war you, Trump, and the administration are waging on behalf of a foreign country, Israel. Quote from Marjorie Taylor Greene.
There you go.
And that seems to echo a lot of, from that side of the political spectrum, that seems to echo a lot of feelings that's being felt. And I think that's why you're seeing, I mean, this war was unpopular from the beginning, but it just keeps going down. And I mean, these are historically low figures. I wanted to touch on that. A couple of other things before we wrap up. I wanted to ask, getting back to the war, Ken, why do you think the Iranians launched an attack against Aqaba in Jordan? That's the port city on the Red Sea. Been there numerous times. It's right there, across the border is Eilat, Israel, and it's a port city, but it's not an export, it's an import area, unless the Iranians are just want to really, really, really want to punish Jordan.
Yeah, so they've made very clear that any country that's hosting U.S. forces involved in attacks against Iran is fair game. So that's number one. So it's no surprise that, they're going after targets in Jordan. The other, though, is Aqaba, right? Aqaba. That's close to Eilat. That's close to Israel. Now, I don't want to read too much into this because, I don't have an inside track on Iranian strategy, but it just asks the question, was that both a message to Jordan, the U.S., and Israel?
Yes.
Just as a little reminder, remember, Iran has a proxy that's very capable in its hip pocket. That's the Houthis in Yemen. And they've demonstrated, their ballistic missile capabilities to include launching strikes at Israel. That happened, I think, early on in the war. But if I got that right,
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
no,
I
you
think
did.
I think it's that's a triple-edged sword. I don't know. I think it in a way was again communicating that they retain the capability to strike when and where they want to.
I mean, the only thing I can figure is incoming resupply of ships
I don't think it had
supplying
anything
U.S.
to do with logistics at this point. I think it just had to do with a more strategic, high operational rationale, which was, we can hit you. And oh, by the way, we've got precision navigation, timing, guidance capabilities to, selectively target something that's real close to Israel.
Yeah.
And that's educated guess. That's just,
And Israel continues here in the last few weeks to remain on the sideline remarkably. But I don't know how much
Right.
longer that's going to last.
Right.
Saudi Arabia hasn't been hit in 3 months, and it looks like they may have launched a missile at Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia has not allowed missile attacks against, or any other kind of attack against Iranian positions from Saudi territory.
Mm-hmm.
Presumably that's why they haven't been attacked. So again, I'm wondering, it looks, it's hard. That's one of the problems out there, folks, is, journalism, and I'm speaking, I'm going to, democracy doesn't work without journalism. And right now, we just don't have a lot of information of what's going on out there. But because, just aren't that many, countries aren't allowing journalists to report from their nations, whether it's Iran or Saudi Arabia or other places. I know that it looks like a lot of the news gathering epicenter is now kind of shifting towards Jordan with reporters there, but we just don't know exactly what's going on and what exactly may have happened in Saudi Arabia. Was there an Iranian missile intentionally fired at Saudi Arabia? I don't know. Have you seen any recent reports on that, Ken, or in open source intelligence?
I have not, but it sounds reasonable, makes sense.
Yeah, for now, I mean, Saudi Arabia has been managing to get that oil through that pipeline instead of going east, going west to the Red Sea. And, I think the Iranians, with their long reach, with their missiles and drones, have the capability to shut that down if they want to. Could be a gentle reminder. Who knows? But anyway. Hey, next podcast, let's talk a little bit about missile defense, and let's examine how Gold Dome in Israel operates and what is the future of missile defense and the layers that are included in that. I think, Ken, you've been doing a lot of research on that. So I say we have a discussion about that next podcast, huh?
I agree.
No, I
Sounds
think
good.
that's a good timing, quite frankly.
And if you want to see these reports we were talking about earlier coming from Beastwerx, Ken, where do they go?
They're out on my Substack channel. You can find me at Ken Campbell on Substack. And then also on my LinkedIn profile. And soon, hopefully within the next couple of weeks, we'll have a functioning website where we'll be hosting the news from Beastwerx Information Group. So
very good.
Stand by for that. Yep.
Good.
Okay.
All righty.
Well, Bobby and I have our overalls on. We're ready to build. So anyway, folks, we're just trying to give you the best information we can, and give the best analysis we can from people who've been around and who've seen a lot. And that's why we're called the Greybeards, but we're the Greybeards of Beastwerx. Thank you for joining us today, and we'll see you soon.